go inside the battle HQ and set up his team, select the weapon, and have fun with the skill tree, which is going to be fundamental. Players can also decide which kind of heroes they can select, and as each hero has its own ability and skill, it's fundamental, we'll say. No? I don't know which is your preferred team, Xavier.
Yeah, I already started to select it. I really
okay.
like Luigi. Like
Me too.
We saw a little bit of that yesterday, but his health point is really low at this part of the game compared to, for example, Rabbid Peach. But he's really good from far and doing far distance damage. So
it's a longer range guy.
Yeah, and we see here, for example, Rabbid Luigi that we won't choose today for the fight, but started to have the Vampire Dash, 30 damage. So it's the highest dash damage that heroes have at first with this crew. But he also add Vampire effect, which the enemy become vampired, and then every time you hit the enemy, you get life. Even if Mario is shooting him or Luigi, you're gonna get life. So it's a life pool, which is quite interesting. So he's really this little guy.
It's very strategical because you use it on some enemy, and maybe all your heroes can shoot at him to recover part of the damage dealt on the enemy.
Right. Yeah, so you'd want to, in your turn when you're in battle, like use him first, so you use that status effect, and then your other heroes could benefit from it.
Absolutely.
And then we have the second part of the preparation, like Davide was saying. It's all about the weapons. We have more than 250 type, and different weapons. So really went far into putting different stats, different elements. Like, the bounce effect is my preferred bounce. Super effect, because it bounces the enemy away potentially of the battlefield, and you have added damage, and it's like in Mario Kart, when you get out of the road, and so this approach is just super cool. And if you add that to, I don't know, you burn the enemy, and then with your second character, you just bounce the enemy away. And it works on mid-boss as well, so it's really, it's awesome to see on the screen.
Yeah, especially if you have certain enemies that are rush-type enemies and kind of rushing at you, and you need to keep that distance between them. Yeah.
Absolutely, and you can use those super effects in combination with the techniques. So you may use a technique with Mario, which is called Hero Sight, that prepares Mario, meaning that if an enemy will move nearby him, he will shoot even if it's not his turn. So just imagine that you do the same with other characters. An enemy is moving, Mario goes Hero Sight, shoot the enemy, the super effect bounce apply, the enemy fly over the battlegrounds, enters in the area of reaction of one of the other heroes that shoot again, and maybe applies the burn effect. And as the burn effect is something that allows for propagation, you will see that if the enemy touches other units, they will start to propagate and run.
And here we see a secondary weapon. Yesterday,
my preferred, melee.
It's awesome. It's Mario's hammer, and you have a lot of them. Of course, it's locked so far. You have to unlock them through the adventure. But here it's a good example of a little bit more advanced elements. So, for example, your first hammer that you get on the game is good. The damage output is good. You have, you cannot use it every turn, but still, even with the cooldown, it's quite cool. But if you look at the second one here, not only it adds the honey damage and glue the enemy on the ground for 30% chance, which is incredibly cool if you do it on a smasher, for example. Because you cannot move anymore to attack your other heroes. But also what we see on the top right is what we call the good damage against something. And here it's the Ziggies. Plus 30 damage chance here to apply what you have on the Ziggy. So that's pretty cool, because it means if you have a lot of Ziggies around, by using this weapon can be very effective. So this is something you need to watch out, because every weapon has something different. So
they start very simple, but then we start to add
you can specialize,
stats.
Right?
Yes, and as Xavier said, we had these elements of proficiencies. So some weapons are more efficient against some type of enemies, and some weapons are more efficient against the cover. So regardless of the type of cover, you can damage those even faster.
Another example before we go on with the skill tree, that's the sentry. So Rabbid Peach can use a secondary weapon, sentries. And the big difference here is if you look down there, 150 life point. So it's like a hero, a new hero.
Right.
It
You're
goes
summoning
on.
That,
Yeah.
on your team.
And it applies the push damage and push effect, which is great. It's not like the bounce. The bounce is really bouncing out and potentially out of the zone. The push could do the same. You could be push out the zone itself, but you can also push another enemy behind. So it's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
So it's quite effective here. So this little guy, this little sentry, can really go and really try to affect the enemy you target, and then just push everyone around with the AOE type of effect. So the cover damage is not really high on this one. You know, it says low, so it's not going to destroy that much of the covers. But later in the game, potentially you have some very good weapons to destroy covers in one hit, which could be a very interesting for strategy.
Awesome.
The philosophy of the weapon that we have in our game, it can be divided in two macro areas. The primary weapon that are a very direct way to deal with the enemy. They damage one single unity, and the secondary weapon that are basically area of damage. Once again, those weapons, the secondary weapon, works pretty well in combination, in synergy with some of the techniques that some of the characters, the heroes, will have later on in the game, such as the magnet dance, which is the ability to lure all the enemies around you nearby an area, and this is where you want to hit with an area of the mage weapon.
Gotcha.
And last but not least, the skill tree. Really important to do it before a big fight. So I'm going to reset it here, because you can reset whenever you want. So basically, it's a good way to, so you see the fight seems to be a big fight. You have a lot of covers and stuff. You even have covers that cannot be destroyed. So when you look at that, you can go back to the battle queue and adapt your strategy, your weapons, like we said, but also, of course, the skill tree. So example with Mario. So just quickly, we have move and attack, technique, and other elements that we can add as well. And
which are very important, because you can change how much the character can move in the area of movement, or the stamina, or how much health will gain back when he will find mushroom in exploration, or the area of movement outside the pipe, the rabbit pipe that you can find in the battleground.
So for example, here I have 40 orbs. So you know those orbs are what you get from fight. If you did very well in fight, you get more orbs. So as soon as you have orbs, you can start to spend them. So the very first element that Mario can do in his moving phase is an upgrade to what we call the stump jump. So basically, thanks to this, you will be able to do a team jump like before, but then stump on the head of the enemy for damage as well. And it's another boost as well in terms of reach and zone of movement. So that's a very cool element. So you just upgrade it. Mario's happy. And starting now, you can do it in fight right away.
Nice.
And then it's up to you to upgrade. So you can upgrade your dash damage. And as you proceed into the game, it's going to be more and more expensive. So you'll have to make choices where you want to put your points. So you cannot put your points at the end of the game over everything. You have to choose drastically where you want to go for each of them. So Mario can be very different from one player to another one.
Right.
And it's really letting the player experiment with the game. It's one of the key features that we wanted to have in the game. But also for the player that doesn't want to, they can press the autofill function. And so basically it's what we decided for the player, the best,
recommended skills,
the best
right.
free, the best fast.
That's awesome.
What's great about
I'm sorry, go for it.
So what's great about it is too, again, you can reset it every time, and so depending on what battle you're in, you just set it to that current standard. So then you're able to counter for the environment, for the enemy. So it's great that being that you can change it every time. It's a great possibility of different varieties of battle.
That's why we wanted to have, before the fight, really have a look into the battlefield itself so you can adapt.
That's really
The
smart.
difference with boss fights, you don't have this preparation phase to, it's really up to you to discover what the fight is. So you have to go in a way that you look at the battlefield and, okay, I'm going to try to go for that, but you'll be surprised with the boss because you don't know what's going to happen. That's what it's going to show.
I guess we'll see what's going to happen here in a second.
Yeah. So I'm going to buy the secondary weapon as well. this
Or
hammer.
you can trust the autofill.
Or we can trust the autofill. So this feature is interesting if you want to go straight into the action. So you press Y, and the game says, you wanted me to autofill the element. Of course, it's based on what we chose, depending on your rank and where you are. But of course, it's something that maybe is not totally connected to what you would do. But you can have this option as well. So let's go.